one of the stories that really opened my eyes, we interviewed Gabby Franco from Texas. She was a Venezuelan Olympic shooter back when she was there, and this was before Chavez came to power. And her Olympic shooting coach had escaped Cuba, and he told his shooting team, "You guys, I'm getting a little nervous about this Chavez guy. I'm getting a little nervous. He sounds very much like Castro." And everybody on that shooting team said, "Oh, please, we will never end up like Cuba. We're not an island. We're a democracy. We're rich. We have all that oil. It could never happen to us."
Morgan Zegers, so great to finally have you on American Thought Leaders.
Thank you. I'm so excited, really, I am.
So, I've wanted to have you on for a while. Everyone kind of out there that's a regular Epoch Times reader or viewer knows we're not so hot about communism and socialism. And obviously, you aren't either.
No, I'm not.
But a lot of young people in America seem to be, and there's a lot of media, a lot of press about this. And why don't you tell me what's going on here?
Well, the story kind of plays into why I started Young Americans Against Socialism in the first place. Around November 2018, I was noticing this really disgusting trend of people my age supporting socialism, being more favorable towards that idea. And then in November 2018, the squad was elected, AOC, all of her socialist buddies. They were definitely proud Democratic Socialists of America endorsed candidates. And then later on that month, I saw a poll from Gallup, and it said 58% of people my age would choose socialism for the future of the country. And I saw that. Baffled. I was embarrassed, I was disgusted, I was confused because I just thought that it was basic knowledge and understanding that socialism was a bad idea. It hasn't worked before. It's not going to work again. And so I didn't know much about it, but I knew the basics, and I really appreciate history. And so I looked further and further into it. I did a lot of research into how socialist movements in the past and socialist leaders in the past have come to power. And then I tried to make those connections of how is that similar to what Bernie Sanders and the Squad and the DSA and the Justice Democrats are behaving now. And I see some really troubling trends. And so I started Young Americans Against Socialism, nonprofit, nonpartisan, 501c3, and we make educational videos and we put them on social media because 90% of people my age have a social media account. I will say, we are against socialism in the sense that socialism is when the government seizes the means of production, nationalizes industries. A lot of people use socialism in different ways. Republicans overuse it, Democrats overuse it. But what I really want to fight is the fact that 70% of my generation that say they would vote for a socialist, they do not actually want to seize the means of production. Instead, Bernie Sanders is lying to them about what socialism is and what kind of socialism he supports.
So, that's actually super interesting. People say that like Sweden or Denmark are these socialist countries, but I guess you don't agree.
No, and that's a very simple fact. Once you look at the basics of this, it's a very easy thing to understand. And so that's why I don't say I'm trying to re-educate my generation. I'm not trying to make them smart. I'm not saying you're dumb, you're putting the future of the country at risk. Why can you be this stupid? Instead, I'm saying Bernie Sanders is lying to you. For decades, he has been advocating for seizing the means of production, for nationalizing industries. He's praised Castro, he's praised Nicaraguan dictators, he's praised Venezuela, Maduro. He's, over time, decade after decade, he has praised actual socialism. And now all of a sudden he's running for president and he goes on MSNBC and tells the American people, when I'm talking about democratic socialism, I'm looking at Norway, I'm looking at Sweden, I'm looking at Denmark, I'm not looking at Cuba or Venezuela. But his government website, in 2011, his Senate website, quoted an article that said the American dream is more apt to be realized in Venezuela than in the United States of America. So explain that to me, please. And so what I'm trying to do with YAS is develop an understanding with my generation that Nordic Europe relies on capitalism. They have big, huge government programs, huge welfare programs, and high taxes, but they still rely on a capitalist economy, a market economy, to create the wealth that it pays for those programs. And they're barely able to pay for those, but that's a separate conversation. That's a Republican versus Democrat conversation. And if you want to be a social democrat, and that's really what Nordic Europe is, social democracy, it's still a capitalist nation. All those countries are still capitalist. And so Bernie Sanders is advocating for actual socialism, and my generation is willing to vote for him and support him because they think we'll end up like Denmark, a capitalist country, if we vote for the anti-capitalist candidate. It just doesn't make sense. And so I want to equip them with the truth.
So my parents escaped from communist Poland in the 70s. That's how I ended up here in America, right? And one thing I found, I've done work with a lot of people from countries that have faced, basically from communist dictatorships, the sort of the progression of socialism, where it ends up. I think that it's very hard for a lot of people to kind of get what it actually looks like in a society that's realizing actual socialism, that's realizing actual communism. And frankly, I didn't get it until I started talking to Chinese dissidents about the fact that everyone as effectively could be reporting on you, for example, and that's just part of life. And that's what my parents told me about in Poland, but it didn't click,
Well, that's a lot I could say right there, but I think an important thing is, people say I'm fear-mongering, that Young Americans Against Socialism, all we're doing is some red scare, calling everything socialism. I think Republicans overuse the term socialism. Anytime a Democrat proposes some larger government program, we scream socialism, and that's confusing my generation, and it's allowing my generation to dismiss it and say, oh, we'll never be like Venezuela. And so, bringing up your parents, what we're trying to do, the left is amazing at using emotion. They don't have the facts or anything on their side. We have the facts, the statistics, the economics, the logic, the history, all on our side, but we aren't using emotion. And so I wanted to pull that in, and I've been interviewing people who have lived through the hell of socialism and communism, because I think their firsthand experiences are going to be able to convey emotion and make it easier for people my age to understand what it's actually like to live there. Some of the funny stories, it's just really baffling. I post stories of people who literally windsurfed from Cuba to the Florida Keys, put their lives on the line, and then I will have socialists in my DMs, in my comments on Twitter, rejecting that story, denying that that's socialism. And so even if we put the facts out there with the emotion, there's still going to be the few radicals that deny it. But for the average Americans they might be swayed by AOC and Bernie's really simple utopian language, I think when they see these stories of people who have put their lives on the line to escape socialism and communism, they're really going to be able to open that up and have their hearts accept capitalism in a better way. One of the stories that really opened my eyes, we interviewed Gabby Franco from Texas. She was a Venezuelan Olympic shooter back when she was there, and this was before Chavez came to power. And her Olympic shooting coach had escaped Cuba, and he told his shooting team, you guys, I'm getting a little nervous about this Chavez guy. I'm getting a little nervous. He sounds very much like Castro. And everybody on that shooting team said, oh, please, we will never end up like Cuba. We're not an island. We're a democracy. We're rich. We have all that oil. It could never happen to us. We're rich. And so Gabby does a video with us explaining how nobody in her family even believed him, but she did, and she escaped Venezuela right as Chavez came to power, and now she's so thankful that she did. She has a family in America. Her family's stuck in Venezuela. They're stuck there. And she does her video, and she's like, I literally cannot believe that I am telling a camera right now the same thing my shooting coach decades ago told me. And now in America, you have the same people saying, oh, it could never happen here. We're not like Venezuela. We are rich. We're a democracy. It can never happen in the United States. That's a really powerful message, and I hope that emotion will really convey and change the minds of people my age.
It sounds like Gabby's someone that we need to have on the show.
You definitely should. She is a powerhouse.
We have an interview with Ivan Simonovis, who was the police chief of Caracas and spent 15 years in prison.
Oh my gosh.
because Chavez and him didn't see quite simpatico.
I'll have to watch that one. That's
yeah,
amazing.
That'll come. A lot of that one was translated. We have to work on them a little more.
Well, that's something difficult too. Is there's a lot of people who are made for camera who just want to tell their story and be that superstar. When we launched Yes, we got 1 million views on our video in 24 hours. When we launched, I was not expecting that. I had no idea the virality of what I was creating and the potential for it to go viral. I had no idea. And so 1 million views in 24 hours. We got 45 million impressions on social media in the first month. It was amazing. And these people, their stories are being seen by all these amazing Americans that are inspired by them. And what I feel so bad about is these people are not interested in talking about themselves. They are not conceited. They are not going to go in front of a camera and tell you their glorious life story. It's a really hard thing for them to talk about, and so making them feel comfortable and making their story, making it clear that this is a really important thing that they're doing is so important. And then of course you always have to have captions because these people are probably speaking a second language. And it's a really powerful experience for me to go through personally.
How is it, you explained, you saw some trends that disturbed you, you decided to start this organization, but somewhere, you have this deep sense that the system is wrong. And where did that come from?
Well, my personal values, I'm from upstate New York. My dad's a colonel in the military. My mom is the true conservative in the family. My dad isn't really political, but my mom watches Fox News all the time. And so she's more of the ideologue. But when I was growing up in upstate New York, we're the highest tax state in the country. We have an incredibly corrupt government. And so there's a lot of pay-to-play trials going on. There's a lot of corruption being exposed. And growing up under such corruption and misuse of tax dollars really had an impact on me. And so I wasn't really paying attention to politics, but all I knew is that I wanted a responsible and limited government. And what really, I always say this in my speeches, I talk about my communist roommate. I went to American University, and I'm a redneck. I'm from upstate New York. I'm a patriot. I love my country. And I went to Washington, D.C. for college, and I walk in to my roommate's room, and there was this poster on the wall of Mao Zedong, Lenin, Stalin, Karl Marx, and Fidel Castro. Yep.
Wow.
All 5 of them. And I kind of looked at it. I just met her. And so I'm like talking to her, but then I'm looking at the wall like, what's that? And eventually I asked her, and she looked at me with the biggest smile on her face. And she was like, oh, I'm a communist. And she is like the classic American girl. She grew up in Richmond, Virginia. She's going to American University in Washington, D.C. She went through the whole U.S. education system. And she told me, her word was that Republicans and conservatives are mean. We're mean. She had a poster of mass murderers and dictators on her wall, but we're mean. And her reasoning was that we don't put taxpayer dollars and government force or action behind the things we say we care about. And I was like, oh, okay. I'm glad you said that. Because to me, it says that conservatives have not been properly messaging our ideas and our values if my generation thinks that caring about something means putting government action and force and taxpayer dollars behind that issue. And so that was the first lesson. But the second lesson was that this girl, again, had a poster of mass murderers and dictators on her wall, but she was literally one of the kindest friends I've ever had. Incredibly nice, incredibly friendly, so caring for her friends, and she also was caring for her community and her country. She was very well-intentioned, and she truly, deep down in her heart, believed she was advocating for the working people, the working class, by advocating for socialism and communism and Marxism. And so that's what led me into YAS of not making this, oh, let's make fun of millennials for supporting socialism as they're eating their avocado toast and texting about how they hate capitalism on their $1,000 iPhones, because people do that. They make fun of millennials all the time for being stupid. And instead, I'm more embarrassed, and I want to equip them with the truth, because I don't think they know what they're talking about, and I think if they understood the facts, they wouldn't support socialism.
Well, we've been, sort of cataloging a bit some of the really disturbing trends in the education system.
Yeah.
Right? Where a lot of the, someone could go through the, K-12 education and come up with an idea that these people on the posters you described are decent people who have lifted all these people out of poverty and are heroes and all this kind of, and I mean, as absolutely insane as that might sound, or against any semblance of any historical record that means anything, right?
You'd think that would allow us to win the argument, but it's not enough.
So I feel actually very similarly to you that it's not, there's a ton of good intention.
Yeah. Well, I think with the education system, a lot of people say, the socialists have infiltrated us and they are specifically not teaching about socialism. I think it's a deeper issue, though, of we're learning the basics in school, but instead of learning that these evil socialist dictators like Castro, Maduro, what's his name, Daniel Ortega, we're not learning that these men started as socialists who promised to fight for the working class and provide free things for all and to provide create a more fair and moral and equal society, because that's what they did. Fidel Castro promised a free election after a year and a half of him being in office. Did that ever happen? No. And so what I'll be talking about in my speech on Friday at CPAC is basically socialist leaders throughout history have done 3 things to gain support for their movement amongst the people. First, they distort the language. Bernie Sanders does this specifically. He has this one video, and I can send you the link if you want to share it with your followers. He has one campaign video where it's young people saying, "What is freedom? Am I free if I have student loan debt? Am I free if I have high healthcare costs? Am I free if I only work my dead-end job to get healthcare insurance?" And, well, yes, all of those people are free, but the video does not say that. The video ends saying, nope, you are not free. Freedom comes from economic freedom, and you aren't economically free unless you have XYZ government program. Freedom is Medicare for all. Freedom is the Green New Deal. Freedom is free college for all, student loan forgiveness, XYZ. He has changed what freedom means. So it's not freedom from an oppressive government, freedom to live your life. It is now freedom from the responsibility to take care of yourself. The burden of being is what I've heard some others say. I think it's in the book, The Road to Radicalism or something like, I can't remember right now, but it's the burden of being. The left denies it, they reject it. The second thing that happens is the creation of the need for wealth redistribution. And this is really where it plays into when we were failed in the classroom, by not being taught that socialist leaders promise really great free things and create frustrations between the classes and the tactics that they use.
Right.
That's when we have a hard time making the connection now when socialist leaders promise us those same free things. We weren't taught that in the classroom. We were taught that those men were evil. We were taught that they starved their people and that people died and they were evil dictators, but we weren't taught how they came to power with those great promises. And so now when we hear Bernie Sanders and his great promises, and we hear him saying, you aren't free and you have a lot of student loan debt, give me government power, and I will use government force to take money from other people who have more money than you and give it to you to cancel your student loans, cancel your medical loans, XYZ. I think it's really hard for us to make that connection and even be genuinely worried because we don't have the knowledge in our hearts and in our minds. The third thing is they create a sense of fear and urgency. Climate change, man, climate change. They say the world is going to end in 12 years. If we do not pass the Green New Deal. And this is where it really, really drives me bonkers. AOC's chief of staff admitted proudly in an interview that the Green New Deal started as an economic restructuring of the economy, and then later they slapped a sticker on it that said climate change, and they made it about climate change. He admits it in an interview. He's not trying to hide it. He doesn't accidentally let it slip. He just admits it was an economic plan, and then we made it about environment. What the heck? Don't tell me the world is going to end unless I pass this radical socialist agenda. So I just feel like if we had a better understanding of how socialist leaders come to power, and if we learned that in high school and in college, it would be easier for us to acknowledge that a socialist leader is using those same tactics. But we don't have that those educational tools in our pocket.
You know, to your point, we just interviewed Bob Woodson, who has this new project to counter the 1619 Project 1776. And we ended up talking about the Cloward-Piven strategy and how, you know, exactly this idea that you kind of break up society to create this, literally break down society to be able to create this new, I guess, utopian world or something like that. So this has actually been applied. It's actually been kind of affected in society. I mean, New York City arguably went bankrupt because of the application of this strategy.
Well, what I think is interesting, I can't remember who said this, but basically every socialist movement, they have the rich versus the poor, right? That's the frustration that they create. There's tension between those two groups. But now with American identity politics, you have the rich versus the poor, you have illegal status versus legal status, you have Republican versus Democrat, you have all these different
Black versus white, of course.
Racial,
right.
There's so many different dividing aspects in our community right now. It definitely creates, I think, a higher level of tension. Another point though, you know Teen Vogue?
Yes,
Teen Vogue.
I'm aware of Teen Vogue.
Teen Vogue. When I was
strangely,
so I'm 23, and
Yeah.
when I was maybe 13 or 14, my grandma for Christmas would get me a subscription to Teen Vogue. So you get a year's worth of the magazines. They come once a month, and I would read those at 13 or 14, and it would say articles of like cute nail polish colors for your skin tone, or cute places to buy spring dresses that have flowers on them, stuff like that. Now, Teen Vogue will write an article that says how Karl Marx is still relevant in our society, how communism is still relevant in our society, how to have you bunch of little teenagers, some really radical stuff. And then I did a little digging. Teen Vogue sponsored a table and a panel at the Socialist Party 2019 annual convention. And guess what they talked about at this convention? How they have to get rid of the family structure in American society in order to get socialism implemented in American society. And I connect this because when they take out family values and when they take out other ways to achieve happiness like family, love, relationships, children, then all you really have to worry about in life is your financial situation. That's really like the only, like materialist. You can only get positive, happy vibes from the things that you own and the money that you're making. And that allows people to be more frustrated with their status in life, and especially when somebody has more money than them.
And there's a cajillion studies that tell us, very detailed studies that tell us that stuff never makes you happy. Ever.
Absolutely. Well,
Right.
I could get into this, but like the hookup culture, it never makes you happy, and instead they're telling women that it's empowering them. So the more I see these Teen Vogue articles encouraging women to stay single until they're 35, encouraging not getting married because 70% of people get divorced anyways, I'm starting to worry that it has deeper connections. Politics is downstream from culture, and I'm really worried that conservatives need to catch up, or not even conservatives, but just pro-freedom, regular capitalists, Republican or Democrat. We need to catch up with our messaging because we're really losing this game if socialists have infiltrated Teen Vogue.
So, Young Americans Against Socialism, what's the plan for this coming year? I mean, you're still a pretty new organization. You've kind of went off with a bang, right?
Trust me, it was hard. Yeah, I had a full-time job when I started this. I worked in Boston in advertising. I just had an idea to make some educational videos as a passion project. I thought I would have my full-time job still, and instead when we launched, it just exploded. And I'm really thankful for that, and I'm so appreciative. But I had no idea that it was going to be like this, and so it's been hard to learn how to run an organization and to keep everybody paid, and I have to fundraise constantly because then people aren't going to be paid and can't do their jobs, and then we won't make educational content, and it's just this never-ending cycle for a 23-year-old to be handling. But I'm working really hard, and it was so nice. All of our donors are small donors. I mean, we had 2 family foundations that recently reached out, so I think that means we're growing and we're achieving the goal of becoming a more well-established organization, but it just meant so much to me that when we started, we had like 3,000 people donate to a strange 23-year-old who just wanted to make some videos. And so I'm just so appreciative of it, and we're working really hard. For 2020, we're focusing on environmental solutions, healthcare solutions, and student loan crisis solutions. And I think those are the 3 topics that my generation wants to hear about more. I think those are the 3 topics the left uses to push their socialist narrative, their radical agenda. And I think if we counter that by providing common sense solutions, we're going to be able to win. Not any election, we're a nonprofit, but we're going to be able to win the overall argument of America versus socialism, which is the theme of CPAC.
Yeah, absolutely. When you were describing, your donor base, people often ask us, we're a nonprofit as well, and say, so how are you funded? Especially in DC here,
right.
Everyone's, how are you funded? Everyone's expecting there's some billionaire, but no, it's actually the readers. They buy subscriptions.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And when I started this, I can't remember how, but I got on Glenn Beck's podcast, and I got home from work one day, and it was before we even launched, and I said, yes, I'm starting this organization, Young Americans Against Socialism, and he was like, well, where can you donate? And I said, yes.org. My phone started pinging. People were just donating to me after I did a 5-minute interview about how I was interested in helping. It was just fascinating, and so I really think that this is a message for the people. This is for average Americans that are just fed up, honestly, of seeing socialism, of all things, being implemented or possibly being implemented in the United States of America, the land of the free. So it really means a lot to me, and it keeps me going every day to know that those are our supporters.
So, and your website is?
Well, right now it's fightsocialism.org. What we do, a lot of people come to me, especially after I get off stage, and they go, please talk to my granddaughter. Like, she came home from college and she's a radical. And so we made a website where it's all of our videos. We try and categorize them by socialism, capitalism, Nordic Europe, firsthand experiences of socialism in Venezuela, Cuba, USSR. And we're really just working to make more and more videos. And so hopefully the more videos we make, it'll be easier for people like the people that come to me after my speeches to just send the link to their grandkids or their kids, so then they can show these young people the truth about socialism. And that's our goal, really, is to just make as much content as possible. But it's all at fightsocialism.org, and I hope everybody shares it. I think what's so important, we would be in a better situation, I think, if parents and families pass down the values of just hard work, capitalism, American ingenuity, and of course limited government to their children at the family dinner table, so that they aren't going into the classrooms completely oblivious when they're being indoctrinated by their professors and teachers.
58%, I think that was the number we mentioned
Yes.
earlier, right, is kind of supporting some sort of socialism ostensibly of millennials. But that also means that, 42%?
We've got some numbers, right?
Right, don't. Mm-hmm. Or do you know how many actively, is there a number for how many millennials, let's say, actively, see socialism as a problem?
I don't know how many see it actively as a problem. I'm sure it's actually fairly big. I think the bigger source of excitement that I see, and why I feel so excited for the future and really hopeful, is because the same people that say they support socialism are also saying they support capitalism. They also are very supportive of and feel positive about that. And I can't remember the numbers right now, but it's well over a majority of young Americans also see capitalism as the way for the future of the country. So this is literally just a definitions issue. Once we figure out the definitions and set the record straight and stop Bernie Sanders from distorting what socialism means so that he can get elected, I think we'll be in a better situation. And we're working every day to do that. I think, and people might disagree, I think my generation is the most creative, capitalist, I just think we're so
entrepreneurial.
Innovative. Yeah, entrepreneurial. We're so innovative. I mean, TikTok videos, I'm baffled by how creative people are on TikTok. They get famous and then they make all this money, and at the same time they're still leftists. And so people are experiencing so much opportunity in America just by making social media videos. And I mean, I did it. But I just get really inspired. So many people my age make bracelets and sell them on Etsy and then pay off their student loans. I have a flag business. I don't know if you knew this. I make wooden American flags.
Yeah, I saw that.
I literally watched a YouTube video, taught myself how to make a wooden flag out of $20 of wood, and then sold it for $150, and I paid off my student loans. And so if you can learn anything on the internet, you can make a business out of anything, you can sell products online. There's Fiverr, where young Americans will literally sell an online service of, I can make you this graphic, I can edit this video, and then you get paid $20 for editing a video. It's amazing, amazing evidence of capitalism, and I just hope that capitalism won't be a dirty word anymore. I hope that we kind of teach our generation that you are very much capitalist. I hope you know that, and hopefully they'll embrace it within the next few years. That'd be nice.
Well, so speaking of TikTok, right, this is very interesting because, of course, TikTok is a kind of a platform that sets certain rules, and based on those rules, you can get wildly creative and do amazing stuff. And I've seen some of them, and they blow my mind. At the same time, if you put out a message talking about the Uyghurs in China, as you probably know, familiar with that video, that will get censored because ultimately that platform is controlled by the Communist Party of China, which, yeah, exactly. So you have to, this is another way actually which socialism kind of encroaches on our society and our values. You know what happened with the NBA, for example, right?
That was disgusting. I think I don't know if you've noticed these too, but people my age are creative at their messaging, and this is something the left does so well. There's TikToks where people on the left who are advocating for the Uyghurs, they will be like, hey, here's my tutorial on how I just curled my hair. And then it goes, okay, now let me tell you about the Muslims being oppressed in China.
Exactly.
It's fascinating to see these political activists working around, and it's even exciting for people who aren't really political to see, because they're like, wait, what is going on? I just thought I was watching a makeup tutorial.
Yep.
And it's inspiring for me to see the leftists do that, because I think those issues in China are rooted in freedom, and I hope that it opens their eyes, especially the people in Hong Kong. I think it was really an eye-opener for people in the middle of America's leftist movement to see the way Bernie Sanders could not even stand up to the Hong Kong oppressors. And this is an example of, again, the left controlling the narrative on something. I don't know, do you remember when Chernobyl came out on Netflix? So that is the USSR, a communist nation. Lenin, Stalin, the worst of them. And people on the left were relating the authoritarian behavior of the USSR to Donald Trump's administration, saying that that's what he was like, and the people on the right are like the evil people of the USSR. And I saw it again this week when Bernie Sanders was again doubling down on his praise of Fidel Castro, where people were then saying, oh no, Castro's like Trump. Trump is like Castro. They're both authoritarian, and they're evil men, evil dictators. And it's like allowing the actual socialists who believe in the same thing as Fidel Castro, the same things as the leaders of the USSR, to skate free just because they're willing to play political games of left versus right. And I think we need to get rid of that language, that kind of conflict, and focus on the bigger issue here of capitalists, Republicans, and Democrats versus true socialists. And I mean, AOC said herself, she endorsed Bernie Sanders, their buddy, and she said herself that in any other country where there isn't a two-party system, she would not be in the same party as Joe Biden. And so I think it's a joke that we act like, oh, she's just a little more of a radical Dem. She's a true socialist, and so is Bernie, and so are the rest of them.
So, you know, one of our columnists has a theory, Roger Simon, has a theory that the Democratic Party is actually going to fracture in the near future to the people that are more socialist and the people that simply aren't, because there certainly are a lot of them, right?
Well, Bernie Sanders, his performance in that debate in the last week or so, when he has refused to walk back those comments on Castro, and he even doubled down, I have never seen. I was shocked. My timeline was full. I watch these videos all the time. I know word for word what Bernie has said about Fidel Castro and about Nicaragua and about Venezuela. I can cite to you what he said by heart. But I have never seen so many other people sharing those clips. That clip of him from Cuba that is on all of my files and in so many YAS videos was now filling my timeline, and from a lot of moderate Dems. And I was shocked. And I was so excited because finally people are paying attention. Finally they are paying attention to the fact that for decades he's been talking about these radical ideas. And I just feel like we're at a time of awakening.
Morgan Zegers, such a pleasure to have you.